In many respects, we have to live in this world as if there was no God.
From Portland, Oregon, Verdict Publications presents its 1987 Summer Seminar, Farewell to Religion, with Verdict editor Robert D. Brinsmead. An Australian entrepreneur, Mr. Brinsmead has lectured extensively on 5 continents and is a lay theologian. In this session, he speaks on a manifesto of Christian atheism.
We continue with this manifesto of Christian atheism. I'm reminded of a cartoon I saw some time ago of the situation in Northern Ireland. There was this Irish pub in which there was some big, tough Irish fellows seated. One fellow was just sitting a little apart, and, one big tough Irishman looks at his direction and all other eyes turn to him, and he says, "Say, O'Flanagan, how is it that you're not out looting and shooting and bombing?" he says. "Are you an atheist or something?" Apparently it was felt that his non-involvement in the activities was a sign of his irreligion. In our last session we were speaking about freedom from the Bible, and there's just 2 points we need to clarify and cover before moving to our final point. The first thing is this: in some ways we ought not to take ourselves so seriously in religious things. For instance, we like to think that we get our ethics and our moral values and maybe our social and political ones, I don't know, from the Bible. But the reality is, and I read this insight in a very fine Christian scholar, he said none of us really get our values, our moral, ethical, social values directly from the Bible. That's not the way. We only have to, be sensible of how it works. The reality is that our moral and ethical and social values are basically mediated to us through the community in which we come up. Isn't that true? You think about it. The social and religious community in which we are, which we grow up, actually mediates our values to us. Now, the Bible may be used in that, but really, to a very large extent, if not the largest extent, the Bible is appealed to justify and to legitimate the existing values that the community mediates to us. That's why religion, of course, and it's well known, tends always to act as a conservative force to uphold, to sacralise, to legitimatise the existing religious, social values of our environment. So what we do actually, we go to the Bible and find the appropriate material and the appropriate text to justify and uphold the tradition that we feel ought to be upheld. And then we turn around and say, it's all based on the Bible, you see. The second point is this: since the great revelatory act of God took place in the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, it is not now, no longer, that we bring that under the judgment of the Bible. But the reverse, rather now, we look at the Bible in the light of the resurrection. Now, this will turn everything on its head. This is where it's all at. Isn't it clear that you don't come from the Old Testament to the resurrection? You don't even come from the cross to the resurrection, because the cross in itself, the meaning of the cross, is not evident in itself. You only understand the cross in the light of the resurrection. That's very important. If you don't move from the resurrection to reveal the meaning of the cross, all you can do with the cross is project our own values, our own meaning, give to the cross our own meaning, and that's what the Christian religion has basically done in all these substitutionary theories and so on. It's only the projection of Latin, the Latin world framework. It's only the projection of feudal society or of monarchical society or the basic system of Western law courts. We project that to Calvary. We bring to Calvary our own meanings. But God's way is to begin at the resurrection. Here is the great revelatory act of God, and now we look at the Old Testament in the light of the resurrection. We look at the cross in the light of the resurrection. We look at the future now in the light of the resurrection. You've got the principle. You don't move from the Old Testament to explain the resurrection. You don't move from the cross of Calvary and with theories about the atonement to explain the significance of the resurrection. In the same way, you must begin at the resurrection. You must begin with the great revelatory act of God, and in this light come then to the Scripture, to the Old Testament and to the New Testament. That makes a big difference. This means now that even the New Testament must stand under the judgment of the gospel. You say that's a scandalous and a breathtaking thing to say. I say, is it? After all, the first Christian community had to judge the books by something. On what basis did they decide to accept this book in as representative and reject that book if it wasn't by the gospel? How is it that they rejected the gospel according to Thomas? Why didn't they put the Acts of John in? Why didn't they have the gospel according to the Hebrews? Not the book of Hebrews, they put Hebrews in, but there's another book called the Gospel of Hebrews. Then there's another one called the Gospel of Peter. They never put that one in. Therefore, it's very apparent that the first Christian community had to sit in judgment on their own literature. And how is it that they made judgments to put prologue on the fourth gospel? Someone did it. Now, you may say, oh, I thought John did it. Unless John wrote those first 17 chapters of John, then it's not as good for me now. I say, nonsense. Since when, if someone else has written it, that's not as valuable? Are you presuming because the first witness actually wrote it, it has to be superior? That's assuming that James' understanding of missionary activity or someone else's or Peter's understanding of missionary activity would have to be better than Stephen's activity because Peter is the apostle and Stephen is not. Right? Truth is truth, doesn't matter who says it. And whoever put that prologue on the fourth gospel, it's one of my favourite passages in the New Testament. And it doesn't make any difference who put the prologue there or the epilogue on the back of it. But it's very clear that the New Testament was making the first Christian community was making, the early Christians were making judgments, weren't they, on their own literature. Which ones would be accepted, which ones would be rejected, which portions needed a little bit of editing if we're going to send it out to others who may not, they need a little introduction here, they need a little conclusion on the book of Mark there. But the point that we need to remember is that we understand now the nature of Scripture in the light of the resurrection faith. That is the key. Once you see that this is the faith, this is the gospel, this is our foundation, this is what gives us life eternal, this is the great light of God, then everything begins to shine and becomes clear. The place of the Bible, the place of the Old Testament, the place of the New Testament, the place of the cross, the place of the teachings of Jesus, the importance of the future, the place of the world, everything comes into place in the light of the resurrection of the crucified. Now we move to our final point. And it is this: that this resurrection faith that calls us to this breathtaking freedom is not only a freedom from all religion, and a freedom from the Bible. That is, when I say freedom, I'm talking about freedom from the tyranny of religion, all religion. Freedom from this type of legalistic tyranny of the Bible. So it also brings to us freedom from God and a kind of tyranny that the God of the Christian religion brings. I want to suggest that the God of the Christian religion, in very many respects, he overpowers and he suffocates humanity. It is taught, for instance, that this transcendent God, and there's always an element of truth where truth is perverted, or generally. It is generally said that this great transcendent God, he is in heaven, man is on earth. God is everything. God is everything. Man is nothing. And then God is altogether righteous and man is altogether sinful. And so you're trying to deal here with some sort of viable partnership, of fellowship between one who is everything and one who is nothing, one who is altogether righteous, the other is altogether sinful. What very often and what easily happens here is that God easily overpowers and suffocates humanity, whereby there's no real humanity at all. This view of God is very often a projection of man's will, and it's a lustful will at that, to dominate, to control others, to subjugate others. And this view of man, or rather this lust, this will, this crooked will which is in the sinful creature, is all too easily projected to God. And that can be very convenient too, when you want and have institutions and so on, where you want to subjugate people, where the clergy and the institution wants people to submissively obey, and women to keep their place in the church, and disadvantaged people to submit to the social order. That this view of God then easily reinforces the social and religious situation. And then in this context, then it is taught that the only real freedom man has, this sinful worm who's nothing, and before this great God who's everything, you can bring in all sorts of texts here, without me you can do nothing, now you are nothing, and God is everything, and you just beat upon your breasts, and here is the great teaching of original sin. Now all you can do in this situation, and it is often suggested, the only true freedom that can be found is in total surrender to the will and to the control of God. This, very often, is really only a form of masochism. It reflects the other evil side of human nature. While some can get pleasure out of the subordination and the exploitation of others. In masochism, happiness is actually found in losing yourself, in total submission to be subjugated. That's the essence, the genius of mysticism. Mysticism, you get so absorbed into the divine that the human is altogether lost. You become nothing. You enter the great nirvana. And you are swallowed up. You have no will and no separate identity. And you are swallowed up in the great divine nirvana. I'm using the Hindu, but the Hindu and Christian at this point, Christian mysticism and Hinduism at this point is no difference. It's masochism. In this amazing little book on the sociology of religion, Peter Berger says, the most radical but also the most consistent and development of this posture is to be found in the various conceptions of divine predestination that developed in all the major branches of the biblical tradition, though with particular ferocity in Islam and later in Calvinism. And you can read some more of this if you read the book of Ellul. He's got some startling comments in relation between Islam and Christianity. But I'll go on from Berger. The Calvinists, glorying in the inexorable counsel of God, who from all eternity has elected a few men for salvation and relegated most men to the destiny in hell, is probably the culmination of the masochistic attitude in the history of religion. This becomes especially clear if one reflects that in early Calvinism it was firmly maintained that nobody could possibly know whether he belonged to the elect or not. It was therefore always possible that the God who was fervently worshipped served with all the rigours of the Calvinistic ethic, and in some cases at the risk of life itself, had already condemned the worshipper to damnation from the beginning of time, and could not be deflected from this decision by any conceivable effort of the latter. The sovereignty of God and the negation of man both reached the terrifying climax here in a vision of the damned themselves joining in the glorification of that same God who has sentenced them to this damnation. The gentleman is right. That's the height of extreme masochism. And of course the greatest sadomasochist in the universe is this God of this Christian religion. He would have to be. Especially with that old-time Calvinistic doctrine of hell thrown in. You'd have to make all the men who ran the Inquisition and all the horrors of the men who started up the gas ovens in Germany like a bunch of innocent Sunday school picnickers. Now I'm aware of the fact that this view of this great God who is everything, this sovereign God, the harshness of it is softened by by saying that God is love. Really everything he is doing, suppose you turn it round and forget about the harsh Calvinism, and really the Calvinism says God does it all for his own pleasure and all for his own glory. Man is sort of seems to be somehow here God's plaything in this. But supposing now we soften the blow and we say, yes, but this supremely omnipotent God, he is a God of love, and everything he's doing for our good, you see. So we soften it with the idea that God is love. And so he's not the harsh dictator, he's the great benevolent despot now, who runs your life. And even this love and this benevolence that we are so totally dependent upon, even that becomes an instrument to enslave us further. A few nights ago I was watching part of a television program. I'm sorry I didn't see all of it because I got in near the end of it and I can't remember all the detail, but the essence of it was this. There was one of the actors who was acting in MASH. It wasn't the lead actor, one of the men who was one of the, the main characters in MASH, but he was one of the stars of this story. He and his wife were basically, when the crisis came, I only got in at it. They were married somewhere when they were in the mid-20s, 23, 25, somewhere in there. And when I got in on the story, but I got the drift of the thing, they were in their 30s. Now what happened is this young fellow was just starting off in life. He didn't have much. But his young wife's father was a big capitalist tycoon. He had he had jobs, and he was a marvellous father. He always called his daughter my little girl, even after she was married. And the son-in-law was always boy. What do you want, boy? I'll look after you, boy. Do you want a job? Okay, I'll get you a house, the best house in town for my little girl and for this boy. So he gets them a nice home, you see, and he provides the best job. And it goes on for 10 years, and a crisis comes. I won't go into the story. It was a very fascinating story. But the story was, it was a great insight to the problem of what happened. This man, this domineering character, who really had the good of his daughter at heart, and I suppose the son-in-law too, out of his very beneficence, his benevolence, right? It became an instrument to actually rob them of their identity, to enslave them. It was breaking up the marriage. It was destroying the fibre of their very existence. And he got to the stage, he had to rebel. He had to declare his independence. The father-in-law said, boy, you go out of this place naked. You won't have anything. You won't even have a job. And I'll see to you that I'll see to it, he said, you won't even get a job in this city. It doesn't matter. Rebel he must. They had to make their own way. You see, what happened in this story was that the father's very kindnesses, his benevolence, was actually overwhelming this young couple. And actually, it was destroying them. Is God like that? It is proposed that this great, benevolent, transcendent God who is everything, since he is everything and we are nothing, how often it is proposed that the only real freedom is found in letting this great God take over your life completely and let him run it. You can't run your life. Hand it all over to God and let him run your life for you. Sounds lovely and pious, doesn't it? Now, there's just a few little practical problems here. And it is this. Since it is really not self-evident how God runs your life and takes it all over and runs it for you, I say that's not self-evident. There are always the representatives of this God and various institutions and various teachers who are all ready to help you how God is going to take over your life and run it for you. And actually what happens, they run your life for you in God's name, you see. Because it's not evident for the new convert, you see. He's told, let God take over your life. You are nothing. Without him you can't do anything. And true freedom is found in total surrender to the will of God. Now let him take over your life completely. God is love and you depend upon his benevolence. Now I say again, it's not really self-evident how this God really, in a practical situation, takes over and runs your life. But his agencies, you see, his representatives, they're already there. The religious gurus and the institutions, they are there in God's name to take over, to control and run your life. I say to you, do you want to be relieved of the responsibility of running your life? Do you want that kind of security? Well, there's plenty of agencies, institutions in the realm of religion There are plenty of religious institutions that are ready to run your life. But I want to suggest, very seriously on this point, that the greatest evil in this world, the greatest evil in this world is the disposition that humanity has, that we have, to run other people's lives. We try to control and manipulate. We use money to do it, and we use institutions to do it, and we use love to do it, and we use kindnesses to do it, and we use human need to do it, and we use, above everything else, we use religion to do it. The greatest evil in this world is the evil of interfering in the lives of people, of taking over and running their lives. It happens in families, it happens in marriages, it happens in parent-children relationships. The greatest wickedness is right here. And it's often under the guise of goodness that this terrible evil, this dehumanizing thing that stops people from being themselves, like this benevolent father-in-law, that's what he was doing, or the benevolent father was doing to his daughter and to his son-in-law. He was destroying them, he wasn't helping them. It's anti-human. We're going to look at it this way. We say it's the greatest evil in the world because in the first place it plays God, right? But in the second place it plays God very badly. I'm more concerned about that. Those who want to take over your life, these religious agencies, religion wants to take over your life. It is always there to tyrannize and dominate. Don't worry. In our whole history of Christianity and the Christian religion, there's always these barbed wire fences, you know, these Berlin walls that keep the proletariat there in the happy socialist paradise sort of thing. And people build these barbed wire fences in order to keep you in body and soul. Now, of course, it's terribly dehumanizing because that is being at the very root of everything. It is anti-human because it robs you of the most precious element of being human, namely to be free. And I don't care if it's for your own good. If you're not free, absolutely and completely free, it is evil. It is the very essence of diabolical wickedness. But you see, all these mediators who want to make clear to you how God takes over your life, all these mediators, they're not only playing God in controlling and wanting to run your life, they are playing God very badly. Because what I'm going to suggest, they are trying to do what even God himself will never do. First of all, let's look at the life of faith. All right, we believe in the resurrected Christ. We've been made new creatures in him. We talk about as we did in our previous sessions, that in this resurrected one we have unrestricted access to God, right? The total reality of God comes to us in Jesus Christ through faith. This is the new life. It's a life that we've seen that's free of religion. It is a life we've seen that is free of the old law. It's quite amazing how free it is. May I dramatize it a bit? All right. You now believe that in Christ you come into the very presence of God. You can commune with him as Father. You can even call him. In fact, you're told to dress him like a term of intimacy, like Papa or Daddy. right? There you are. This is what you have in Christ. Now let's see how much rigid control he puts over this new life that you have by faith. You say to him, how many times a day should I pray? Well, what do you think? Well, I want you to tell me, Lord. I'm not going to tell you. It's over to you. Oh, it's over to me. Then you're just thinking, I really need to show my appreciation, you know. I must use my resources and be responsible. I know I'm not under the Old Testament law. And then you come to the Lord and say, Lord, how much money should I put into your cause? I mean, what is it? Is it 10%, 5%, 50%? I mean, do you want me to sell up everything and put it into the cause? What do you think the Lord says? Well, what do you think? You think he's as free as that? It's over to you. I'm not going to tell you. That's what he's really saying. I'm not going to tell you. You can come and talk it over with him. He's always there. You can pray with him, always, in secret. And methinks, he says, and when you come to talk to me, don't come and talk to me with all that religious claptrap. I don't need that. I mean, you and I are together now. I mean, don't come with all this stuff. Like the heathen come with their beads and their religious talk and all these symbols and incense. And I mean, you in Christ, if you believe the resurrection, right, you have access to him, not through a veil now. There's no veil there, right? In the risen Christ, you are totally in his presence. Now, don't carry on with all this religious make-believe anymore. I mean, leave that out. Now, if you start thinking about the new life, the life of the new man, and in the life of faith, what is amazing about it all is how little it is regimented. How little. You know, if you may excuse me by referring to something rather personal, but my father died of just a few years ago, at a great old age of the 94th year of his life. He was pretty active right to the end. Since his passing, I've sort of begun to appreciate what a very good father he really was. Aside from the fact that I missed his company. I was the youngest of 8 children, and I think as he grew up, he became more and more liberated. In fact, I know he did. So I wasn't brought up as regimented as the older ones. I suppose people would say that's the trouble. But he always lived in and with and near his family, and he was always there. In other words, we'd often just go up, talk things over. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, I think I'm going to buy some cattle, or I might buy the neighbour's farm or something. Oh, yeah, well, what do you want to buy that for? Yeah. He was always just there to talk it over. Never tried to run my life, never tried to control it, never tried to dictate the terms, this is the way, this is the way you have to go here. Not at all. It was just great. He was always there to talk it over, talk it out. Of course, God is much better than that, but I want to suggest it's more like that. How many times you've been thinking about my prayer life? How many times a day do you think I ought to pray? Well, what do you think? Talk it over. But in the final analysis, I want to suggest that God says, it's over to you. You choose. Not the Lord. No, he says, you do it. You're a human being. I've made you. That's what I've made you for, to be human, to be free. I want you to be free because, why does God want you to be free? Because if it's not a free decision, it's not really a good moral act. Can't you follow that? If it's a regimented thing, it's no longer free. Supposing God is the great sovereign, you're just living by the Bible, you see. You've got no decision of your own, you see. You're living in this sort of surrender, this stuff that you're going on with. Well, I'll tell you how you live. You live like old King Henry VIII's executioner. Here he is. Henry VIII's got a shuttle line going. The wives are coming in, one after the other. You know how it was. The first one, and the executioner must chop her head off. And when Anne Boleyn comes in, you know, she was quite a nice woman. And the poor old executioner, if I read the story from Dabini, he was very, very sorry to have to chop off her head. I mean, he was a kind man and a compassionate man, but you see, he was under the orders from the king, so up came the axe. I'm sorry for this. Bang, next head chopped off, and here he was chopping off heads. Now, could the king congratulate him? Could anybody congratulate him for being a good man or for being an immoral man in that situation? Not really. He wasn't really fully human because in his office he was not permitted to be fully human. He was just carrying out orders. He was doing like, he was obeying like Christians obey, as Ellul says. He was obeying like a happy imbecile. So the next head, right, chop off heads. He had no say in it. See, if you don't have freedom, if it's not really your decision, if it's done by the old way of the law, if you want to say, Lord, it's your decision, you give me the orders from the Bible, you see, that's a marvellous way to live. We don't have to make weighty decisions. We don't have to examine, as Paul says, and test what is what is our duty in this given situation. But we can be freed from all responsibility, just like the old executioner. And you see, if anybody gets hurt, this is the marvellous part about it. If anybody gets hurt, what can you say? Well, don't blame me. You'll be like some of those Nazi war criminals. I was only carrying out orders. The Bible says. That's why we're given. God wants us to be human. He knows what human is. And do you know God has made man to be free, and above everything else, he respects our individuality. He knows that he is so great that if he's not careful, he's going to overwhelm us. He has to sort of withdraw from us. He has to be like the good parent. Let the children grow up. Don't smother them. Let them make their mistakes. For goodness sake. Let them make their own mistakes. Like a cartoonist I see in Australia called Ernie, he said, if I had my way over again, he said, I would begin making my mistakes earlier. This is a freedom to be truly human. But there's another aspect of this, and I want to press this further. If you look, we've been looking at the life of faith in fellowship with God. This new life we have in faith. There's not that rigidity. It's not the old way of living out of a book. It's not the old way of giving you the freedom from all responsibility. No, that's not the freedom. As far as it is possible, this is what I want to suggest, in the limits of our finite existence, God does everything possible that we be free and that we be truly human and that we take the responsibility. And he does everything possible so that he does not smother us. In this God-man partnership. But there's another aspect to this. When we think of our mortal existence, the life we live here on this earth, and it's very important here to show that because of the gospel, you know, you have this sort of paradox that the future is already broken in, and yet the time continues until the parousia, right? The now and the not yet. And so it is. We are in faith in the new life. The new life has already begun in faith, and in faith There is no more intermediate state. In faith, we live in the direct, unveiled presence of God. Is that clear? We don't have this mediated existence through religion. Faith gets rid of religion. There's no such thing as a mediated existence. But we also are the old man at the same time of flesh and blood, and we have to go on living in this world much the same as other people do. And it's not a matter of simply looking at life now and saying we are the new man, we are new creatures. As well, we are also the old creature, part of this dying age, that we continue until the end of life or until the parousia. And as I said in an earlier session, human existence is a mediated existence. And in the life of flesh and blood, we also, with other human beings, must live an ordinary, worldly, earthly, mediated existence. We have to use money like everybody else. We have to live through institutions. We need the state. And we have to live in an earthly life of flesh and blood like everyone else. Is that true? That's right. And don't get that existence mixed up with the faith existence. For instance, you don't give me your drive along the road and you see the sign, here you are, you're dealing with the ordinary, down on earth, flesh and blood existence, right, which is a mediated. This is a mediated existence now. And you are driving along the road and you're in a hurry or some other thing, and you see a sign that says 30 miles an hour. And you say, oh, that doesn't apply to me, I'm not under the law. And away you go. You'll find out or not whether or not you're under the law. Because in the old flesh and blood earthly life, you must live under the law of the land, the law of the state. There's all sorts of restrictions, there are all sorts of inhibitions, and so on. Now, this life that we live in this earth, let's see how much God really interferes with what we do down here in this world, in the sphere of our earthly stewardship. We have to live, we have to marry and raise families and get a job and make decisions and buy and sell and use money and all sorts of things that we engage in this earth. And I want to ask you, lift up your eyes and see reality. How much does God do and control what people do in this existence? Now, I'm a believer. But I tell you what, God never gave me a direct word about who I was to marry. He didn't tell me whether to be a horticulturist or a lawyer or a mechanic or anything else. Well, I ended up basically a horticulturist and some other things too. And I grow avocados, and I have a lot of problems growing avocados, as most people do. One is this terrible problem of root rot disease. And do you know what? Because I have immediate, through faith in Christ, fellowship and access to God, do you know what? He's never told me any inside secrets how to overcome avocado root rot disease. Now, why doesn't he? I mean, why don't I get a word from the Lord? Why isn't it transparently clear that anybody who becomes a Christian is immediately a better mechanic, a better president? I don't know whether Jimmy Carter, for all the reputation of a born-again Christian, I don't know whether it gave him any infinite advantage of being a better president. Now, what am I getting at here? You've seen how, although in the area of faith, in the new life of faith, in the Spirit, and you're already there at the right hand of God, how little structured your existence is. But when you come to the sphere of living in this finite existence in this world, it's even less. The amazing thing, it is even less. Because as you live in this world, although we believe in God's overriding providence and the providence of God in history, everything demonstrates to us that God does not in earthly existence work with us immediately, but God works mediately. In other words, if you are hungry and if you are needy, or someone else is needy, and you ask God and you cry to God for help, how does He help you? How does He feed you? By coming to your door, dressed up as Santa Claus? Or who's this fellow on TV? Oh God, Burns, isn't it? What's the old man's name? George Burns, riding on his motorcycle. Boy, that was fun. You ever seen God on a motorcycle? No. How does God work? He works mediately in this earthly existence. He sends someone else to help you. He sends the rain, right? He works mediately and not through direct help. And that's the nature of this earthly existence. And we have to walk by faith. And He doesn't tell you where to work, how to work. I mean, in the spirit of work, yes, but in other words, this earth, this life that you are to live here, is the sphere of human responsibility. And as far as your life and this world is concerned, it's very largely over to you what you do with your life and what you're going to make of it. And don't expect that you're going to have live by direct miracles and voices from the Lord telling you what to do in the sphere of your finite life. It's a terrible mistake. It's foolishness. It's fanaticism. And now for the other, the view that God is everything and man is nothing. That's true when it comes from passing from time to eternity. That is true when it comes to reveal God's purpose for the human race. That's true that man cannot step from this earth or something else in redemption, that God is everything, of course, because you're dealing with infinite things beyond the ken and capacity of man at all. But when you deal with the sphere of this earth, the emphasis of the Bible, friends, especially the wisdom literature in the Old Testament, is not man is nothing and God is everything. The emphasis in the wisdom literature, which is the down-to-earth literature in the Old Testament, is that man is a fantastic being made a little less than God, and he is able to do such wonderful and astonishing things that God in heaven Himself is astonished what man is able to do. And instead of waiting for God to do it and saying that you can't do nothing and God has to do everything, you try it out in this life and carry it out and see what's happened. You'll starve pretty quickly. Because God doesn't govern your life like that, and He doesn't govern this world like that. You see the point? Now, here is where I get to my point, where a lot of my argument is with a lot of the pietists and my charismatic friends. It's right on this point. Because you see here we're dealing with a twofold existence. In faith, in the gospel, in the risen Christ, we have immediate access to God, correct? No religion, no mediated existence in the life of faith. It's all gone. But in our earthly existence, it is a mediated existence. God doesn't feed us directly. God doesn't help us directly. God doesn't give us His wisdom directly, right? We have to live on this earth as a mediated existence like everyone else. Now, what happens here in a lot of Christian piety, and especially do I see it in the charismatic movement, in the life of faith? Instead of getting rid of religion, I see in a lot of this Christian piety the multiplication of religion. More religious institutions. More religious paraphernalia. And subjection to existing institutions. More bricks and mortar. More people dropping out of the world and going into religious vacation. More people with collars back to front. That's true. That's the fruit. You ask me, what is the fruit of it? I observe that the fruit of these so-called renewal movements is exactly what is sometimes said. It is a religious renewal, and so it is. It multiplies and increases religion. Where, if it was a gospel renewal, it would be abolishing religion. But then, when it comes to this earthly life and living in the mediated state, in a lot of this Christian piety, the thing is turned completely back to front, and now they say, it is not me that does it, it's Christ that's living in me. And so in the ordinary day-to-day things they do in the sphere of human responsibility, they claim a sort of voice or direct, immediate intervention of God in all sorts of fantastical, wonderful ways. I don't believe it. And what happens? That which is supposed to be the mediated existence in this earth is made an immediate thing of immediate voices from the Lord, and that which is supposed to be the life of faith in which there is no mediated existence, that is made a religious existence. And the whole thing is turned upside down. And religion always leads to enslavement. And the idea of God running your life by a direct word from the Lord, or by miracles, or by the inward voices of the Spirit showing you what to work and where to go and who to marry and so on, that also leads to a frightful oppression. That's not treating man as a human being who must grow and must develop. And thus, to be truly human means to be truly free in more ways than we have imagined and dared to imagine. I believe that the gospel would teach us that we are free to make decisions, and we must be responsible for those decisions. I know that we want the freedom from such weighty responsibilities, and we want the security of not having to make our decisions. But we are called to be free and to go out to an open future. I do not believe, as Elul said, that there's such a thing as this sort of hard, fast, predestinarian destiny, that the future is open, and the risen Christ goes with us into that open future. God does everything possible within the limits of us being finite beings to give us total freedom. And freedom, genuine freedom to choose in the light of the gospel. And it may be even freedom to make mistakes. Yes, he even gives us that freedom. Plenty of evidence of that. And the freedom, too, of being truly responsible, which means being truly human. In many ways, I believe what Bonhoeffer said is true. We have to live in this world, and his words could be misunderstood, but should not be misunderstood. In many respects, we have to live in this world as if there was no God. As if it was up to us, as in many respects it is up to us. What are we going to do, and what are we going to make of our lives? And yet we can do this all in the light of the resurrection, knowing that he is Lord of history. And this same one who gives us this freedom, he is always available, he is always there. This same one is also pledged, I will never leave you nor forsake you, and I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Thank you.